So what's the deal with creatine?
Yeah, what is the deal with creatine? Is it protein? Is it amino acids? Is it a peptide? What the heck is creatine anyway?
Well, what is it, and should I be using it?
Yeah.
If I'm trying to get
that's a good question. Yeah.
As the kids say. Dr. Ron
Swole?
Dummar here. Swole's, jacked.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I understood the reference, but
Yeah.
I'd never heard it.
Like Popeye,
Yeah.
eating his spinach with a little side of creatine. Dr. Ron Dummar, Nick, your friend and curious patient here at the Community Health and Wellness Clinic in Heber City, Utah. This is the Be Well Now podcast. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a couple years ago, I was like, can I be using creatine?
I think you did. And we turned you on to a specific supplement that we have that we actually manufactured here in our office here in Heber City.
Oh, is this called LionAide?
LionAide.
Energy drink mix, pre-workout boost, has 3 grams of creatine. Link in the description below. This is actually not a plug for LionAide, but I think it speaks to your belief in creatine as a supplement.
Well, it's definitely helpful for the muscles, helpful for the tissue, neurology, in a variety of different ways. So yeah, it can be beneficial, certainly for sports. Now, one of the reasons we actually created this was to give parents an option that is healthy to give their kids, because I saw parents on the sidelines when I was running a soccer club. They were on the sidelines, they'd give their kids Coke, or they'd give them Jolt or Mountain Dew, or a variety of these high caffeine, high sugar, high chemical additive drinks. And I thought, man, that's not going to be good long-term for those kids. And so I really wanted to be able to create a product and put it in the marketplace that parents could rely on and know that it had healthy ingredients that were safe and were going to be beneficial for their kids.
There's a lot more than creatine in there. Mm-hmm. I guess if folks are older, younger, active, not active, a lot of things I'm seeing these days show that like everybody should be on creatine. I mean, is it that simple? Where do we start?
I don't think it's that simple. I do think that if you have an objective to meet and you're working out, which people should in general be working out, and you're looking to make some marginal gains, or you want to retain muscle tone, I think creatine can be beneficial for you. But let's also remember, or maybe let me suggest and say to you, where 95% of creatine is actually stored in the muscles. Okay, it's stored in our muscles. And then the rest of it's kind of stored in the kidney, the brain, and the liver. All right. And so this actually is very similar for animals. So if we eat muscle, then we're going to consume creatine, right? And that contributes to, muscle tone. We're going to have protein, obviously, that we're consuming as well, and amino acids. The body will break it down into the amino acids and then build proteins that are needed out of that. It also builds peptides, right, which signals hormone and production, enzymatic activity, and all sorts of things like that too. So it can be very, very beneficial, and there are natural sources for it, right? We naturally get creatine. We're naturally sourcing creatine when we consume eggs, when we consume any sort of meat, whether it's pork, turkey, lamb, beef, chicken, poultry, all of that. When we consume those meat sources, we're getting creatine at a higher amount, eggs at a lot lesser amount, but the meat sources, because we're talking about the muscle, right? That's where 95% in the body, 95% of creatine is stored in the body. So if we consume muscle, even though it's from an animal or fowl, we're going to get creatine. We're essentially supplementing, you could say, with creatine.
Should I supplement with creatine even if I'm eating red meat?
Well, if you're eating red meat, you should be getting all the creatine that you need, right? If you're consuming meat on a consistent basis, then I would say there's not necessarily a justifiable reason to be like, okay, I have to have a whole lot more creatine. The reason that someone would supplement or suggest supplementing with creatine is to say, I want to increase the efficiency of my body to receive creatine. Because what you're doing is you're essentially extracting out of that muscle the creatine, putting it in a bioavailable form that is deliverable. It's in an extracted package. Yeah. And then you're just giving it, boom, sending it straight into the body. And the body's going to take it up and it's going to deliver it to your muscles as well. because it'll sit in your muscles because it actually helps your body to have to basically recover quickly. So you can get back to more activity. So an athlete can actually perform at a higher level or do repeats at a faster rate because they're taking creatine. Now, just a quick story on this. When I was in high school, I ran cross country, and I was I was an all right runner, and you were a cross country runner, I think too, Nick. My coach at one point, we were really pushing for the state championship, and my coach introduced to us this magic juice. And he came to us and he sat down. I remember to this day, he was very specific with it. This is in the mid 90s. And he's like, listen, this is, the science, I think, is pretty clear on this. However, there are opinions back and forth as to whether we should really even be doing this. And there's potentially maybe some harms that could come to the kidney or the liver, and we don't really know yet. But everything that I've seen, and he had used it himself too, it's been super beneficial. And so if you want to, and your parents are willing to support it as well, we're going to be putting this in our juice. And so we started supplementing with creatine in the mid 90s and running cross country. We did become state champions. And whether
so if you too want to be a state champion, take some creatine.
Yeah, exactly.
Available that's at creatine.com.
That is the moral of the story right there, right? So, but it was cool, it was neat. That was my first introduction. That was my first time even having experience with creatine. And I just, as a kid, I was just like, okay, cool. This is some magic sauce that my coach has put together. And, I felt a little more special because he was doing that. But I did feel when I drank that juice, I did feel a little extra kick for it, a little extra pump that I was able to perform a little better.
Does it help in recovery, you're saying? Like if people get sore muscles, it helps with that? It
helps with your muscle recovery. It helps in your performance as well. So you can take it as a pre-workout to increase your pump with performance. And we've talked about with LionAide as well, how we put some caffeine in there. Caffeine has also been shown as a pre-workout to help improve the performance of the muscles. So you do that with the creatine and you get an additional little boost. But yes, it works beneficially to help the muscles because it will allow the production of ATP, which is the energy source, the adenosine triphosphate within the muscles. It'll allow the production of that so the body tissue, the muscles can recover quicker and get right back to another rep, right? And so the load that people are able to sustain while they're under creatine seems to be more.
Yeah, so what is it, creatine?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What is creatine? Creatine really is amino acids. It's 3 amino acids. It's L-arginine, it's methionine, and it's glycine. That's essentially what creatine is. And people ask oftentimes too, well, is it protein? Obviously it comes from muscles. So is it the protein that we're getting and that's what's beneficial? Well, protein, there's I think it's important to understand creatine. There's creatine, which is 3 amino acids. And if you have larger groups of amino acids, or you could even say protein fragments, then we'll call that a peptide. So a peptide's like larger amino acid groupings. And then a protein is even larger amino acid groupings. So you have creatine, which is just 3. And then a little larger, you're going to have a peptide. And then more pairs of these amino acids, and it becomes a protein. So a protein really is like focused on structure, muscle building, tissue repair, ligament repair, things like that. Your peptide oftentimes is like hormone function. Sometimes between hormones or peptides and proteins, it can be like enzymatic activity is like what's needed in the cell, what can be produced. But essentially, tissue repair, ligament repair, tissue damage, peptides and proteins can do that, but proteins are more specific to like muscle rebuilding. The interesting thing with creatine is it will actually hydrate your muscles. So if you're looking for better hydration, your muscles, like you said, swollen. I'm assuming that's the short term of swollen, and creatine will actually increase the hydration of your muscles, which basically allows them to appear a little larger, right? But it's not making them literally swollen, as in they're filled with fluid and edema. In that case, you wouldn't be able to use them and they'd be painful and sore. But they just give you a little bit more fluid within your muscles. They stay hydrated better, and you can get a better build from it as well.
So should people take creatine as a supplement?
I think creatine is a acceptable thing for people to take. I would say if you're going to be working out and you know you're going to be pushing yourself and you're doing something, you're trying to make gains. I equate it to leveling up or upgrading, right? I'm trying to get into a workout routine, right? Well, creatine is going to be a very beneficial thing to help you have less soreness, recover quicker, and to actually be able to perform at a higher rate during your exercise. So yes, in that instance, you should use creatine. Right? It's beneficial. You would probably want to start with somewhere between 15 and 20 grams a day. That's like a loading phase.
Is that what you should do as a loading phase, or should you just take it small doses at a time?
So my preference, I'm a small dose guy. It's just who I am, right? So I love doing lower doses. So I generally do somewhere between 3 and 5 grams in a day. That's the most I would do in a day. And I won't even do that every day. I might do it 3 or 4 times a week. And I'm generally only going to do that if I'm working out, right? Now, sometimes I might do it before I work out and after I work out. So maybe I'm getting somewhere between 6 and 10 grams in that day. But there is a loading phase that a lot of people use, which is between 15 and 20 grams, where they load and they're trying to get those specific gains. And I would say if you're trying to push yourself and you've got a big task ahead of you where you're trying to get to, and that seems, for a lot of people, it seems insurmountable to get back into fitness and to get off the couch and, to lose those extra pounds. They know that it's going to be way too much, or they've worked too hard. And so at that point, it's like you should do something to really support your muscles. Do a little loading. Yeah, that'd be good as long as you're working out during that loading phase, and then drop to where you're doing 5 to 10 grams, and you're doing that in conjunction with your workouts, not every single day.
Yeah, people want to know when to use it. I remember trying a loading phase a couple years ago, and it amped me up. I was on it for like 5-6 days. I felt like I was getting weird.
Yeah,
I was doing like 20 grams a day, and it.
How many years ago was that?
A couple years ago.
So, but you were
36.
Sorry to bring up some of your history, but you were on medication still at that time,
I don't
or
know
not?
if I was. I'm not sure. No,
Okay.
yeah.
So we might have to look at that as well.
Yeah.
But
I'm also like super sensitive.
But the creatine though does have neurological effects. Benefits is what we say, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we noticed when we started giving LionAide to kids, because we designed it for kids, we designed it for youth athletes. We tried it in the gyms, and athletes loved it, boxing athletes, and we did a variety of different gyms that we went to, and they really liked it. But they didn't feel like a lot of these gym goers, they're used to like this massive boost where their veins are like popping out. And that's not what this is going to do for you. It's designed for kids, but it does give you a sustained endurance, right? You're able to endure and to maintain a level of performance that is higher than you otherwise would have. And one of the cool things that we noticed when we started giving this to kids is that some of their memory and focus and concentration issues were becoming less problematic. And the parents were commenting to us, "Oh, I've started giving this to him so that he can focus at school." And I was like, "Wait, what?" I had not intended it for that purpose. But it started to become a trend that a number of our patients were, giving it to their children for ADHD, for lack of memory, for focus, concentration. So it definitely does have a neurological protective benefit, and it reduces inflammation in the nerves. And so, like we said, one of the things there's
what does the creatine or the other?
The creatine, like the creatine itself. I'm sure a little bit of caffeine was helpful to help them focus and concentrate as well. But the creatine, I think, was more of the significant actor on the brain and the nerves to help reduce the inflammation and allow the kid to not be so erratic in his behavior, right? And so I think it's super important for us to acknowledge the benefits of creatine from a neurological standpoint, because now we can say, all right, if we can get creatine into our bodies, either from consuming meat, right, consuming those sources, or consuming a supplement, then we can actually benefit potentially the liver, which is one of the areas that it's stored in, or the kidneys, which is one of the areas, and the brain. So remember, 95% is in the muscle, skeletal muscle, so we know, okay, we're going to help the muscles. But the rest of that, there's a spillover effect where it goes to the brain. So it's brain, kidney, and liver. So we get this beneficial spillover effect in the brain, kidney, and liver from consuming creatine. Another interesting thing just on that point, sorry, and maybe I've been talking too long here, but when you look at patients who have been vegetarian, and we've dealt with and work with a number of patients, whatever their dietary habits are and whatever they choose, well, that's up to them. And we're here as a coach and an advocate for them and to help them be as healthy and optimal as possible. But what we do find is that oftentimes vegan diets and vegetarian diets tend to fall short in the creatine arena. Obviously, they're not consuming the meats, right? And so their muscle tone tends to be a lot lower, right? And so supplementing with creatine is actually a pretty good idea if they're open to it for a vegetarian or a vegan. It's a really good idea for maintaining muscle tone.
I didn't know that. What about peptides? Are those safe?
So peptides are all the rave right now, right?
Yeah.
And
like the bros are into the peptides.
So the question is really with peptides, it's like, okay, how are these being manufactured? What's the development of these, and what's the sustainability? Like, is it stable? Is the peptide stable? And what's its function? Peptides are actually a really cool idea. I think it's fascinating. Because what we're doing is we're giving instructions to the body. That's what proteins at large, we've said this for many, many years. Proteins give instructions to the body to perform specific actions, right? So sometimes that's enzymatic activity to perform, to develop certain substances within the body. Sometimes it's you have to perform to build collagen, or you have to build ligament, or you have to build muscle tissue, right? So those things are all possible. People are really getting fascinated by peptides, because protein, you could say, is like the end product. And so a protein would go and say, boom, it's going to plug in and do a specific thing. A peptide is a much shorter chain. It's a much shorter grouping of amino acids that can actually have a more broad beneficial impact on the local area, right? So oftentimes people will inject peptides. So imagine you have enzymatic activity that takes place in your stomach. If you are taking oral peptides, a lot of people will do this. They'll take oral peptides. Oral peptides are amino acids. Proteins are larger groupings of amino acids. Creatine is a very, very small grouping of amino acids. Okay, all of those are amino acids. So technically, if you throw amino acids at your body, it will take what it needs and build protein, or it'll build collagen, or it'll build what it needs. Sometimes the body is not getting those messages or those signals in appropriate ways. And so it's just not rebuilding when it should rebuild. So taking a peptide, which is like the between step between that, creatine, as we've talked about, that small grouping and pairing of amino acids, and the protein at the large end stage, we have this kind of mid-stage peptide. We can inject that into local tissue, and we're showing really good results. We're seeing really, really good results where it will heal ligaments, it'll heal tendons, it'll heal cartilaginous surfaces, and patients are reporting, and this is largely what it is patients reporting at this point, but patients are reporting significant improvement in their function, right? In their strength, in their reduction of pain, they're reporting reduction of inflammation. And so, yeah, peptides I think are very promising. It's still quite new, and that it leads us to this idea of adulterants, right? Anytime you have something that's really faddish in the market, you're going to have a lot of different companies and a lot of different people who are interested in making a buck trying to jump into the game. And so we have to be very careful of where we source. If you're going to source your peptides, just make sure you're getting it from a place that you really trust, from someone that you really trust. I personally am not implementing or utilizing peptides right now. I'm watching and I'm observing and I'm still studying. And and that's my approach. That's where I am. But am I using creatine? Yeah, I utilize creatine, and I utilize, obviously, protein sources.
So what about creatine monohydrate? What do they get?
So yeah, creatine potentially, what we need to look at is creatine monohydrate is really that's the best kind. I like the micronized creatine monohydrate. It's essentially smaller particles of the creatine monohydrate. And so therefore it's more bioavailable. It's easier to get into the cell. It's easier to get to the tissues where it needs to be. So you're looking for, I would say the ideal is micronized creatine monohydrate. And the second to that would be creatine monohydrate. Now there's a number of other different kinds. And I actually made a list on this because I don't have all of these on top of my head. But obviously, for adulterants, things you want to look out for are things like heavy metals. You want to make sure that you don't have any additional steroid contamination in the supplement that you're getting. And you want to make sure that there's no impure manufacturing process. There's some manufacturing processes, they'll process other food products, and they could potentially get contaminated, or other supplement products. And you need to make sure that they have high standards as well. The kinds to look out for, creatine monohydrate is really the ideal, right? That's what we're looking for. Some that have claimed to be better, or that they'll push claims like, oh, you should buy this kind, but they also might be a whole lot cheaper right now. And so the peddler of the creatine often is looking to make a buck. So these are things like buffered. Someone will be like, oh, this is a buffered creatine. Oh, okay. You're saying it's buffered creatine. They're trying to sell it as a marketing advantage and to tell you in your brain that that's a better source. Well, I don't really see it as a better source. I don't have any proof. I don't see that there's really any research that shows there's any advantage to a buffered creatine. Okay. Another one would be like creatine hydrochloride. So people will claim that, oh, it's more soluble in water, so it evaporates better into the water, and people don't bloat with it. And
so what do I want? What do I want?
You want creatine monohydrate.
Okay, these are the ones I don't want?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, these are the ones, I'm telling you, these are all the potentially subject or questionable ones.
Got it, okay.
Now, what you'll find is some creatine, they'll have various kinds. Is that a bad thing? No, probably not. Is it a good thing? I don't think we can say. We don't know, right? What we do know is that there's been a lot of research on creatine monohydrate, and micronized creatine monohydrate is beneficial, right? So those two, we can definitely say that with certainty, and that those benefits that we've talked about already, we know that we're going to get by consuming creatine monohydrate and the micronized creatine. Okay, but creatine ethyl ester is another one. It claims to be better, to be absorbed better, and there's nothing to really back that up. There's no sources, there's no research right now that we have to back up that it absorbs better than creatine monohydrate. And ideally, if your body is metabolically well, which we've discussed, 90% of Americans are actually metabolically unwell. But if you're metabolically well and you're working towards that point, you should be able to get your creatine from meat. And so you wouldn't have to worry about supplementing it. But again, what we're talking about at this point is if you're either trying to get more significant gains, right? If you're trying to improve in a different way, or trying to upgrade or up-level your health and your performance overall, and looking for a next little boost, might creatine be an option for you? And the answer is yes.
Would you take it before workouts, after workouts, morning, night? Any other piece of advice for folks?
Okay, so it depends on why you're using it. So if you're using it for those gains that we talked about, like trying to bulk or build muscle or even just maintain tone, then I would say to use it before or after or both, right? So I would maybe 5 grams before, 5 grams after, right? Or 3 grams before, 3 grams after. But that's about what you'll want to do to support the recovery on the backside and to support the pump throughout the workout, okay? And then if you're doing it more for mental health, if you're doing it more to affect the liver, the kidney, and the brain, I would say it's super important still that you make sure you manufacture within your schedule. You need to make sure you have scheduled time for exercise, scheduled time for breath work, scheduled time for meditation. You need to make sure all of that is a part of your routine, right? So creatine's not going to be replacing that. And sometimes if we say, oh, I'm just taking it for mental health benefits, well, you still need to activate the creatine. You need to get the creatine moving and active by exercising, the blood flow, right? The circulation, all of that's going to be beneficial to really maximizing the use of the creatine. So exercise is important is the point, okay? But if you're using it for those other effects, 5 grams a day at some point, and I would probably take it in the morning, not necessarily at night. It might make you a little wired if you take it at night. So I would recommend to people taking it in the morning.
Any other thoughts on creatine?
I think that's all I have.
That's all?
Yeah, we could probably go with more, but I think that's sufficient for now.
And if folks want to get their hands on LionAide, it is it's a very healthy energy drink substitute, right?
Yeah, energy drink. We use it as a pre-workout. Again, we use it as a recovery. It's got a Chinese medicine herbal formula that I put together in it that helps and supports the immune system, because anytime obviously you're taxing yourself in a musculoskeletal way and an exercise way, you're also somewhat taxing your immune system. So you need to really support the immune system during your workout as well. So it's a very all-around focused energy drink that's going to give you improved clarity, mental focus, concentration, and stronger muscles.
Heck yeah. Well said, Dr. Ron Dummar.
Yeah, there you go. Again, we just keep getting better with these cheering. That's nice.
Well, you deserve the applause.
Oh, there you go. Thanks everyone for my applause. Yeah.
To recover after such an arduous podcast. Hey, this is the Be Well Now podcast. Folks can support us by subscribing, leaving us a 5-star review on their favorite podcast platform.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, all the things.
And recommend us to a friend if you liked what you heard today.
And if they want to learn more about community health and wellness in Heber, we have a link below, but how else can they reach you guys?
Well, you can purchase this at earthsmedicinecabinet.com, right? So they can purchase that online. Or you can call us. You can call us right here on our phone number. We still answer the phone. We do have human beings that answer the phone. Isn't that great? You can also text into our number. You can text. We do have that as well.
The texting is nice. I like that.
It's very nice.
I don't call anymore.
We communicate pretty easily and quickly and efficiently with people through that. 435-657-3696. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.